What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to the Versus series. This is the series where I take two similar elements from a Call of Duty game, I put them side by side, have a deep look at their stats to find out which one is best. And in today's episode, we're going to be having a look at the stun grenade versus the flashbang. So jumping right into it, let's first focus on the individual characteristics of these two different tacticals, and then we'll focus more on the stuff that is directly comparable between the two. And starting it off with the flashbang effect essentially just blinds you right up front, and you can see that your screen will go fully white if you're not using battle hardened the moment that flashbang goes off. Then this slowly fades away, and as it fades away, you get a little bit of double vision. And it's also worth noting with the flashbang, there is no heads-up display while this is active. So your minimap disappears, your ammo count disappears, everything disappears until that effect has faded off. Now, it is worth noting that while this effect is active on you, it doesn't have any effect on your sensitivity value or anything, so you can still aim and shoot back just fine. You're just going to have a harder time seeing your enemy. On the other hand, we have the stun grenade, and with this one, the effect is very different. You don't get blinded. You can actually still see fairly well with a stun grenade, even if it hits right at your feet. But the main effects are, you'll get a bit of a blurred vision, a little bit of double vision as well, and most importantly, it significantly slows down your sensitivity values, which makes it very hard to track your target and aim, and also your overall movement speed is significantly slowed down, so you can't just run away if you get hit. And neither of these effects apply to the flashbang grenade. With a flashbang, you might not be able to see, but you could still run away, or you can still try and aim and shoot back at your target without your sensitivity being affected. So those are the more individual characteristics, but now let's start getting into the things that are a bit more comparable between these two. The first thing is the range. Now keep in mind, with hand testing, I got as precise as possible here, but I could be off by up to about half a meter or so. But I did my best here to control all of the variables, and it appears the maximum hit potential with both the stun and the flash is exactly the same at 6 meters. So if that equipment goes off more than 6 meters away from the target, it won't hit or have any effect on them whatsoever, but within 6 meters, it will be a hit and it will have an effect on them. It's also worth noting that the closer that equipment goes off next to its target, the more of an effect it's going to have, which may seem obvious, but I did want to point that out for anybody that might have been questioning it. And I can even show you a couple side-by-sides here. First one will be with the flash, second will be with the stun, and on the left, I've got the equipment going off right in front of me, like super close to me, and then on the right-hand side, it's going off further away, kind of on the edge of the radius where it can get a hit. But you can see, first up with the flash, in both cases, you're still going to get a complete whiteout of your vision. You won't be able to see anything, but that effect wears off quite a bit faster on the right. So if it's further away, the effect simply doesn't last as long, but it is as strong early on. Then when we have a look at the stun grenade, we once again see a pretty similar story. The duration is definitely different between left and right. It's not going to last as long if the stun hits further away from you. And also the overall impact of that isn't nearly as strong on the right-hand side either. So again, this may seem obvious, but I did want to show you guys what that looked like and how important it is to get that piece of equipment as close to the target as possible. But now I want to talk a little bit about the overall duration of the effect for the flash versus the stun. Keep in mind, within these tests, the flash and the stun were going off right at my feet, and I made sure to keep those distances consistent here. But with the flashbang grenade, the total duration of the effect, like from the moment you get hit to the moment you actually get your heads-up display back, is 4.7 seconds, whereas with the stun grenade, it's 5.16 seconds. So the stun grenade actually lasts a little bit longer. And on top of this, this might get a little bit subjective here, but with a flashbang, after only about 2.25 seconds, you can generally see enough that you can make out your target at least. And since your movement speed and sensitivity aren't affected, it's at this point where I already feel fairly comfortable fighting back against my opponent. Whereas with the stun grenade, even when that effect is diminishing and ramping down, any effect on your sensitivity or your movement speed is going to severely impact your ability to fight back against your target. So personally, if we're just looking at the raw effect of these two, I would much rather be on the receiving end of a flashbang over a stun grenade, and therefore I would say the stun grenade gets the edge here. But moving on to the next thing I wanted to have a look at, this is the effect that Battle Hardened will have against the flashbang and the stun grenade. And let's just have a look at this side by side. First up, we've got the flashbang, and on the left is without Battle Hardened, on the right is with Battle Hardened. And you can see pretty clearly here, Battle Hardened not only reduces the effect of the intensity of that flashbang, you can actually see your gun the entire time. You never get that full whiteout screen. but it also very noticeably cuts down on the duration. Our new duration is just 3.2 seconds compared to that 4.7 seconds without Battle Hardened. Then looking at the same thing with the stun grenade, we see a really similar story here. The total impact of that stun grenade is reduced by a fair amount, and on top of that, the duration is significantly cut down. And when I say significantly, I really mean significantly. In this case, you go from a 5.16 second duration down to a 2.15 second duration. So that is actually huge, and it appears that this got a stealth buff at some point over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 months since I covered the Battle Hardened perk. It's been a long time since I covered that, but it seems like they've actually buffed Battle Hardened behind the scenes at some point here, and it's significantly better against flashes and stuns. But that pretty much wraps it up for the duration section. Next up, I did want to test the throwing distance, and with this test, I just made sure I was aiming at the exact same point. This isn't necessarily the farthest that you can throw these. You could get a better angle on this, but just to keep my test consistent, I aimed at the exact same point, and while I couldn't see the exact point of impact here, and it doesn't make an exact mark on the ground, it appears you throw these at least roughly the same distance. If anything, the flashbang goes a little bit farther, but that also just could be down to the fact that I had kind of a hard time finding that exact landing point. In either case, there isn't a significant difference between these two. The exact same thing goes with the amount of time it takes to throw each of these. I did this test with the same gun in my hand because this will be impacted depending on which gun you have in your hand. If you have a pistol in your hand, for instance, you're going to be able to throw this equipment faster than if you had an LMG in your hand. But with an Uzi in my hand, for both of these, it took exactly 1.27 seconds to throw each of these pieces of equipment. So there's no change to them here. And I also tested this with the Amped perk to see if you could throw these any faster while using Amped, and it turns out it doesn't allow you to throw either of these any faster. So Amped doesn't help with flashes or stuns. And with that, that's the most important information that you guys need to know when comparing the flashbang versus the stun grenade. And now it's time to answer the question, which one of these is better? Well, just like with many of the episodes of this series, the answer is a little bit nuanced. There isn't necessarily a clear winner here. I definitely have my preference, which I'll share in a second, but it does depend on the situation that you're in and how you're using these, and they should be treated differently in game. Personally, what I've found is stun grenades aren't as effective against enemies that are sitting and watching a really narrow lane or doorway, for instance, because even if you hit them with that stun before you enter that room and you walk through that doorway, they can still see you just fine, and if it's a narrow enough hallway and you don't have the room to maneuver, they can often still track you just fine and get the kill on you. Whereas in that same situation with a flashbang, assuming you get on top of the situation quickly and you make your push while they're still completely blinded by that flash, you're going to be much better off in that situation compared to a stun grenade. On the other side of that, the stun grenades have a longer duration of an effect, which I talked about earlier. I feel like they do gain the advantage there. And if you do have the ability to maneuver and flank a little bit, the stun grenade is generally going to be your best bet, because even if the enemy can see you, if you have that room to just skirt around the edge of their aim, they won't be able to track you, and they won't stand a chance. On top of this, in a more open situation where the enemy is trying to get away from you, I'm thinking more so like a Warzone situation. Maybe an enemy is trying to get up over a ridge, and you just can't quite get your shots into him in time, and you need to close that distance before doing so. With a stun grenade, you can essentially lock them in place while you close that distance, whereas in that same situation, if you hit them with a flashbang, as long as they were oriented properly when they got hit with that flashbang, they can just keep running, and they have a much better chance of getting away from you. So each sort of has their pros and cons in their own situations. However, in my opinion, based on my preferences, I prefer the stun grenade over the flashbang most of the time. I feel like the stun is just a bit more versatile, it has that longer duration of an effect on people, and it can literally lock them in place and not allow them to move for a few seconds, which is often all you need to flank around and get a kill on someone. And with that, this is where I'd like to hear from you guys. Between these two pieces of tactical equipment, which one is your favorite? The flashbang or the stun grenade? And also, just let me know why you prefer one over the other. Now, if you guys have missed any of the other episodes of the Versus series, I've covered various weapons as well as equipment and even some score streaks. I will leave a link to the playlist down below. Additionally, if you have any suggestions or requests for a future episode of the Versus series, just let me know down there in the comments, and maybe I'll be inspired to make that particular episode. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.